Good morning, everybody. So my name is Russell. You see some of my other videos on YouTube where I am mountain biking, kayaking, or snowboarding, generally speaking. This type of things I like to post. I also work as a bike mechanic before the whole pandemic. Right now, I'm out of work because of the whole situation, so I figured I might as well do some videos, instructional how to do basic bike maintenance for the start. So to start off, I'm going to do a skill which is probably the most important thing you could know if you're going to ride a bicycle. I mean, especially if you're going to go any sort of distance away from home, and that is to learn how to change a flat tire. Since I don't have a tire that is actually flat, what I'm going to do is basically swap out the whole tire, which would be the same principle as swapping out an inner tube essentially. And I'll show you what to look for as we're doing that. So my tire still has air in it, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to let that air out, and I'm just using a Phillips screwdriver to push down the valve stem and let the air come out. I'm going to keep going right until the airflow stops. Now I can move on to the next step, which will be getting a couple tire levers out. The ones I'm using are part tools, just your basic ones that come with the kit, so you can buy them separately. I like these because they're small, so they're the type that I can bring with me if I'm going out for a ride, as well as use at home. And they're very strong. I've not yet had a pair break on me, so basically what you want to do is you want to start as close to the valve, and I'll line myself up with one of the spokes next to the valve that is on the same side as my tire lever. And you'll see the tire levers, they have this little hook on them right here. So basically line that up, and I can bring it down, and then the hook, I can just hook it onto my spoke like that. Take my second tire lever, go a little bit further down, and this is where it's not such a big deal, especially if you have a flat. You really don't need to worry about the air chamber at all. But since I do not want to break my tube, I'm being very careful to just hook onto the inside of the tire, and then you just want to lever it over. And now, once I got it started, usually you can just kind of go all the way around, like so. Take the tire lever out, it's over here, and now, I lost the valve. Now just go to the opposite side of the valve, and this can be easier or much more difficult depending on the tire. Usually new tires are more difficult as well. It depends on the tire rim combination, how easy it is to take it off. But basically once you've got one side of the tire bead pop out of the rim, you can just pull it off by hand easily enough. Just set this down here. Pull out my inner tube. And so one thing I'll do basically if I'm doing a repair of a flat is I'll want to inspect the inside of my tire, because a lot of times what happens is you get these little metal wires, bits of metal wire that come out of car or truck tires, which get jammed in, and that's what gives you your puncture. A lot of times they're still going to be in your tire once you take it off. So I mean, if you just put a new tube in, or attach your tube and put it back in, fill it up, that piece of little wire is still in there, you're just going to end up with another flat, which nobody wants. One is bad enough, generally speaking. So I'll just kind of run my hands very lightly along the inside of the tire. And the reason why I do lightly is because we're talking about a little piece of metal that can puncture a rubber inner tube. It can also puncture your fingers. So you want to you don't want to put too much pressure. You want to be going lightly enough so that if you do feel something pointy, you're not going to cut yourself. You're going to stop before that happens. So I've got nothing on here. One of the other things we want to look at with tires, and the reason why I am changing these ones, is I don't know if you're going to really be able to see it. Not really. but there are some cracks on the side of the tire. So anytime you see the rubber that's cracking like that, that means that the rubber is actually drying out, and it's just time to replace it. You're at much higher risk of getting a flat if the rubber of your tire is no good. So I've got my new tire here. Take the packaging off. There for now. I'm going to put that aside. The next thing I want to inspect is basically the inside of the rim. So what I'm looking at is the rim tape for one, which in this instance is basically, it's just a rubber band that goes all the way around the inside of the rim. See if I can pull that up or something. Just to show. So now we're just looking at a rubber band. This goes all the way around the outside of the rim, like so. And you want to keep that lined up with the hole for your inner tube, which is right here. So that is the type of thing, you'll see them rubber like this a long time. You'll see plastic ones, and you'll see ones that are actual tape, which is, generally speaking, it's going to be a special rim tape. And then you'll also have a rim tape for tubeless tires, which is going to fully seal all the holes for the spokes on the inside of the rim. In this case, the rubber one is very simple. With the plastic ones, one thing you want to watch out for those is sometimes they'll fold over, and that'll create kind of like a ridge where with friction that can produce a puncture. It can pop the inner tube on the inside of the tire. With other ones, you want to make sure that all the holes for your spokes are fully covered. I'll pull this back up again just so I can show you what I mean. So you got the tips of your spokes in there like that. That with the friction, I mean in this instance this is a single wall rim, so it's right on to the spoke nipples. That's the type of thing with friction, with pressure, that can pop your tire. With double-sided rims, that's going to be a hole which will have a edge on it, which the tube will just go right into once it's inflated, and that will cause the tire to pop as well. With tape, again, it's just a question of having everything covered. So one thing I always do when I'm installing a tire is I'll look at for a part that's going to be, generally speaking, where the logo is. So in this instance, where it's written Kenda 1.95 right there, I'll take that and I'll line it up with my valve stem. And then the other part you want to watch out for is the direction of your tire. So in this instance, I don't have a tire that's directional. A lot of the times it'll be very obvious with the tread pattern, but the second you have a directional tire, generally speaking, there's going to be an arrow indicating the direction, the rolling direction on the tire. Just follow that essentially. And then in some instances, there are advantages, mainly with mountain bikes, of putting a tire on against its rolling direction, depending on whether you're having it in front or back to increase traction, whether it's climbing traction or downhill traction. Alright, so getting the first side on, just slide it on, and that's when I want to make sure I'm keeping one side of my tire's bead off of the rim, and that's going to be so that I can put my tube in. And so now, the way I would do it is I always put my valve in first, make sure it goes all the way through, and then I'm going to start working the tube in all the way around. And this is the type of thing, especially if you're using a brand new tube, excuse me, or you've done a patch repair. This is something that you want to have a little bit of air in the tube so that it holds its shape, and basically that's going to just make it a lot easier to put the tire, well, for one, to put the tube inside of the tire as I'm doing right now, and for the next step it's going to make it a lot easier not to pinch the tube as you're putting the other side of the tire onto the, installing the bead. that's one thing I'll do before I start putting the bead of the tire in. I'm gonna make sure I'm pushing the tube itself into the rim so that it's not outside of the rim, and I'm not going to pinch it at that point. Now, to put the other side of the tire, there's a lot of people that will like to use the levers to put the tire back on. Personally, that's something that I will never do, just because you have a real high chance of pinching your inner tube with the lever as you're popping it in. It is possible to do it without pinching anything. You really do need to be careful though. And generally speaking, it is possible with hands. Again, depending on tire rim combinations, it can be easier or harder. But generally speaking, this is the type of thing where it's always doable by hand. So basically what you want to do is start at your valve, as I've done here, and work your way around to the opposite side of the valve on the rim. And then the last little bit, basically what you want to do is start going with your thumbs like this. And just work it a little bit up the side. So this one's really easy, so it's going in right away. When you get harder ones, what you can do, and like road bike tires and mountain and like higher end tires are going to be a lot more difficult. So when you get to the last little bit, what you can do basically is grab the tire with the palm of your hand, just put it on like that, both sides. And again, you want to kind of start where it's about to pop into the rim like that. And you can just kind of fold it over, which gives you a lot more torque. And then once it pops in place like that, you're set. And then basically you just want to make sure that it is indeed in the rim all the way around on both sides. Then we're going to take our pump. In this case I've got a Schrader valve, so I don't need to worry about unscrewing anything. Just put my pump on, and I'm just going to fill it up a little bit. And this is the tire that is between 40 to 65 psi. Yeah, that's exactly it. So it's written on the side of the tire just here. And so that's information that's always going to be there unless the tire is so old that it's worn off. If that's the case, generally speaking, you're probably due for a new set of tires. So this one, I'm looking at 40 to 65. Just bring it up there. And it's real important to have a pump with a gauge for bicycles, because we're always looking at very specific pressure. With kids' bikes, a lot of times it's going to be what I have here, where it's going to be 40 to 65. The other thing you want to keep an eye on as they're filling it up is if the valve is straight, which is going to tell you if your inner tube is lined up or not. In this case I am. If it wasn't straight, I would deflate it a little bit, move the tire, just shimmy it along just so that the valve is coming out of its valve hole straight. Because again, that's another thing. If it's coming up crooked, you're putting stress on it, and the chances are it's going to end up in a flat, not so long time. So with a range from 40 to 65 for a tire like this, I'm going to fill it up to 55, because you very rarely need to go all the way up to the maximum. And you're going to get a little bit more comfort if you go a little bit lower on the PSI. So that's your basic advantages as to having higher or lower pressure. We're essentially just looking at comfort versus rolling resistance. The harder the tire is, the less rolling resistance you're going to have. The softer it is, the more comfortable it's going to be. The other part is the softer the tire gets, the more likely you are to get something that's called pinch flats, which is when the inner tube gets folded up between the tire and the rim and is pinched, which creates a hole, which gives you a nice big flat. Once I have it inflated, the next thing I'm going to take a look at is all the way around. I just want to make sure that there's not a part of the tire that is sticking into the rim more than anywhere else, or that there's not a part that is sticking out of the rim. So basically, like generally, if we're sticking into the rim, that's going to create a flat spot on the wheel as we're going around, which is just going to be kind of like a tut, tut, as we're going around as you're riding. And if it's sticking out, that means your tube's going to pop out and you're going to get a flat fairly quickly. So right now I'm all good. And again, that's the type of thing, if I do encounter a problem like that, take a little bit of air out, try and pull on, if it's sticking in, try and pull it out a little bit where that's the case. And if it's sticking out, well, you just pop it back in. If it's being stubborn, that's not working. One of the things you can do is take like a dish soap or a Windex or something like that, bike cleaner, you can spray a little bit of that on the side of the tire where it's not popping into place like it should be, and that's just going to act as a lubricant. Once you fill it up, generally speaking, that's going to be enough to have it take its place as it should. The best thing to use for that is actually, it's a silicone spray, which is a very effective lubricant for rubber, and it's actually good for the rubber as well, so it won't dry it out either. So that's what I really like to use. But when I'm at my bike shop, I have it. When I'm here, I don't have that luxury. So generally speaking, I take some bike cleaner and I use that. In this instance, everything is good, so we're all right. Next step is to throw it on the bike and get riding. That'll be all for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back with another episode soon.
Keep my hands on myself.